Hey everybody, Jim Rhodes, Artist Relations for Radial. Welcome to another edition of Radial on Record. Today I'm joined by our good friend, producer, engineer, composer, and multi-Grammy winner, Jacquire King. Hey my friend, so good to
Hello.
see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, sir. It's good to be here with you.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
It's
How's
been
how's family?
my family's well. My wife and I are empty nesters as of last fall. So our youngest son he's off at college, and he was home with us for 7 weeks over the winter holiday, like over the Christmas break. They did their exams at home.
Yeah.
I mean, for him, it's mostly an online experience, but he's got one or two attended classes,
Oh,
and but he's enjoying getting into the college experience. So we're all doing well. It was nice to have him. But my wife and I are kind of adjusting again to being empty nesters, which is, actually it's bittersweet. We love the opportunity, that this now brings into our lives. But it's an adjustment, but we're doing fantastic. We're doing great.
yeah, good to hear that. I can share that with you. Yeah, when our daughter moved out, went to university, it was yeah, it's an emotional adjustment because there's the space there, and it's great to fill up the time together. My wife and I mean, we're joined at the hip, but yeah, there's this space. Kids
Yeah.
move out. It's like, oh, what's going on with that?
Yeah,
So
it's
different.
yeah, it's a mixed bag. I mean, I think it's just emotionally, that's the adjustment of,
Good time.
because it really brings home the realization that we're getting older and life is moving on, and it's like kids, that like the joy of having young kids. When you're in it, it seems like it's like long time. It's
Mhm.
just you don't sleep, and it's just always commotion, and there's always stress and worry, and there's a lot of fun too, don't get me wrong, but then in blink of an eye, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, big adjustment. But yeah,
You know,
we're doing good. How about
good.
you guys?
Pretty good. Yeah, things, all things considered, most of us are working remotely from home. The radio family, and Jay says hi. I was talking to him yesterday, and yeah, I mean, we're a big family, and it's tough when we're all working remotely. We haven't seen each other in months and months and months. But I digress. But speaking of family, um, I want to thank you, for joining us here. Appreciate your time because you're a busy guy, but also your family with us. You are one of the main family members of our roster, and you've been with us for a long time for Radial and Primacoustic, and you've helped us evaluate things and beta test things and comment on things. But you're also, as you know, you're face of our trade show, NAM and AES booth. The massive Jacquire King wall at our shows, for the Primacoustic wall, which always gets lots of thumbs up and comments that you're part of the NAM and AES booth that we have. So I wanted to thank you for all the support.
Oh,
It means a lot to us, big time.
well, I mean, thank you for your support, and all that you guys create and do, and having me be part of the family. Yeah, it was certainly cool to see that big display and take a selfie with myself. Um, um, but yeah, super cool. It's I don't Here's the thing. I don't get on, I don't associate my name or get involved with things publicly, unless I really use it and believe in it, and it's like part of my, not, I don't it's, you kind of sometimes get accused of, oh, you're just doing it because it's a paid partnership. Well, I mean, the reality of it is yeah, sometimes you guys make accommodations for me, or change the pricing for me, in as that relationship of me looking at stuff, or just kind of that dialogue. But it's not really about collecting a paycheck from you guys or anything like that. I mean, you guys don't give me a paycheck or anything like that, but it's just, it's a thing of like, yeah, this stuff is great. I mean, the acoustics of my studio are completely treated with Primacoustic You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
now the construction obviously had to do some of the primary things. You know, I have double walls, you know, and there's
Yeah.
space. I have heavy doors. Um, but you know, the finish of the space is just like what you have at home. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
drywall and paint, you know, and yeah, the Primacoustic stuff has been tremendous. I mean, the results I get out of my studio are, um, I'm happy. I'm as happy with it as anything else
Awesome.
I've ever done. You know, my space isn't as huge as maybe Blackbird or some of the places I've recorded, but then I don't really need that, you know, all the
Gotcha.
time. So yeah, I mean, I love the relationship. I love
Yeah.
the relationship, and you guys make. I mean, I remember, gosh, it's been more than 15 years when maybe close to 20 when I got the JD7. That was the first piece I got from you guys. And that thing has been a workhorse for me. And then, you know, other little innovations come along, like, you know, Tone Bone, you know,
Mm-hmm.
your reamp things, the EXTCs. There's so
Yeah.
many tools that you guys make that don't really exist anywhere else. And they're really, the sonic quality of them is there. You know, they're engineer pieces that like high functionality. And you know, you guys take comments and incorporate it into, you know, revising and developing new things. So it's a fantastic relationship, which I'm very grateful for as well.
Thanks. Ditto. We try to make things that make sense and solve a problem. Back to your studio, LBT. It's still called LBT?
It's called the LBT. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when you were, because you were building the studio. You've got a wall, I think, somewhere. Just you built walls in front of windows. Is there windows right in the area where you are, on the exterior of the house, and you've just built walls inside?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I just like excuse me, directly in front of me, you
Hmm.
know, behind the speakers. Yeah, there's an exterior window out there, and this wall behind the console also has an exterior window. So
Gotcha.
what I did is I just basically uh, closed the blinds. They're like those kind of those
Louvers.
little, yeah, louver, yeah. So I shut them, taped them up so they would stay in place. You know, put a little bit of insulation behind them, and then kind of sealed them up a little bit. So from the exterior of the house, it looks like just the shade is drawn.
Gotcha.
And then we built walls, you know, built walls in front of it.
Nice.
You know, there's a bit of an air gap,
Hmm.
but it's basically just 2x4 framing
Hmm.
with rigid insulation, Roxel
Yeah.
insulation, and then stuffed in them, and then a layer of mass loaded vinyl, which is a
Yeah.
very thin sheet of like neoprene type of rubber mat that
Yep.
developed is developed for like the aerospace and auto industry for um, to uh, to minimize engine noise, to be a really good very thin barrier. um, and you know, it's a fantastic product. So all the walls and the ceiling have that on it, and then one layer of 3/8 inch drywall.
Nice. So I
Yeah.
remember you sent the photos to us when we were back and forth on what you were going to treat the space with, and I remember seeing some of the photos, the earlier photos, and then your vocal booth and a few things. It looks like a great space, and it seems to be the space that you call home now. Do you do most of your work there?
Actually, yeah, I have been. You know, I've been in this space working full time. I guess it's a little over 4 years now.
Nice, nice.
I guess it's flown by. And I don't really do. I mean, occasionally I'll go somewhere else for an outside session, um, but you know, the majority of the work that I do is here.
Nice.
It's, you know, it's like if we get, I think the most people I've had performing at the same time are five. You know, so it depends on the setup and what you're
Hmm.
trying to achieve in the recording. Um, you know, sometimes, I mean, I love recording everybody in the same room with
Hmm.
leakage. Uh, But that's not possible all the time,
Mhm.
given what people's experience and expectation of the recording process is. You know,
Sure.
I've worked with some, younger musicians and artists that like they like the idea of it, but then the reality of like when they want to fix something or they want to change something a few days later, it's like, well, we
Yep.
can't,
Yeah.
because your part's all over the drums. And the drums,
Yeah.
it's just like, and then if we mute
Yeah.
your part, if we, it's like, and your open mic is part of the drum sound.
Yeah.
And so if we, and the drum sound was made considering, it's fashioned to work with the leakage.
Yep.
So like some of the ambience that might be on the drums in that, whatever other mic it was, let's just call it an acoustic guitar mic, you turn that off or try to replace it, and then it changes the drum sound.
Yeah.
So it's just not possible all the time. I love it, but people are very used to recording with a click and being able to edit and one thing at a time. And I embrace all that. I mean, I'm all about recording a recording process that fits, what the end goal is in terms of production. And then and then you also have to consider what kind of experience everybody wants to have in it.
Yeah.
I just got to weigh all these things out. And then, and I always try to incorporate some relationship or performance, meaning that, I try to get as many musicians to play at the same time so that the musical conversation of the interaction is part of the recording. But, like, let's just say, so for an example, instead of recording, the drummer probably, if it's a band, the drummer probably, and you've done pre-production rehearsals, the drummer knows the parts to the song, right? And they can play the form. But if they play the form and play the song as they have it in their head to just a click track, that's a different interaction than them playing with everybody else.
Yeah. 100%.
Because they don't have the vocal or the other parts to respond to and maybe kind of lean into the tempo just a little bit or dynamically come down. They just, they just play the part. So, if you do that with a group and if the only thing you keep is the drums, but you still have that relationship in the drum performance with the other. So that's what I mean by trying to always get as much performance element in something, even if you don't keep all of the elements that you record, because they become intrinsically kind of part of it. So, but yeah, I mean, this space is, a lot of my favorite records were recorded in small studios with leakage, so that's actually one of the things I'm going to talk about later today on this Pure Mix question, live stream question and answer that I'm going to do later today that we spoke about before we started the recording. But, yeah, it's just, kind of expanding on that, like what is appropriate, what's appropriate for the production, what's appropriate for the interaction, and like what are you trying to get? What's the end goal,
Would you find that your approach would have started with your, I think you mentioned at one point, your baptism or your audition for Tom Waits was actually going in and learning the performance, where he would just start playing. And sometimes, you know what I mean? Like just capturing that moment, capturing the performance. And, you mentioned some people, obviously like to record with a click or whatever, but in those environments, that would be such an organic, spontaneous performance that you're capturing that magic right there.
Right there. Oh yeah.
The imperfections are there. It's living and breathing, and the mistakes are real, and it sounds organic.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much did you learn from that era? Like
a ton. Honestly, I learned so much. I learned that, I've done a lot of live sound, and I've done a lot of live sound before that. So it's just like, so I had a bit of conditioning it's like, you got to when the show starts, like sound check is one thing. Sound check is kind of like understanding the room, getting, knowing that all the lines are working and kind of just having a basic idea of what's going on. But but the room changes when the crowd gets in there, and, the band plays louder, the energy is just different, the room sounds different. So you got to get it together really fast, you know. But then the Tom Waits thing is kind of, you know, much broader extension of that, because, you know, Tom didn't he didn't rehearse songs and didn't show the song to the musicians. He didn't say, well, he didn't sit down and like play it and it goes like this. Most of the time he wouldn't even tell anybody what key it was in. He'd just start, you know, and oftentimes, you know, if he didn't feel like, you know, I mean, sometimes it was one take, couple takes. Mm-hmm. Typically, if you got to 3 or 4 takes, that was about as much. It's just like, it's either happened or it hasn't, and he's ready to move on. Okay. And then sometimes he might play a song on, we might start on piano. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the way we had it is we had a lot of things we'd leave things mic'd up. So it's like, once we got the mics and set up on the piano, we'd leave the piano mics there, and then like his acoustic guitar setup or electric guitar setup or whatever, you know, all the different little stations or places he might perform. But the vocal mic was always the same. And these things weren't like right next to each other necessarily. So you might start a tune on piano and you might play it one time and not really be feeling it and decide that he wants to go try it on electric guitar. Well, you know, you've got to immediately get into that room, move the vocal mic and get him situated and get back to where you can record, you know, get to recording. Yeah. And what it taught me was that, I mean, obviously I did, you know, really inferior sounds or not capturing the sound would have been, you know, cause for getting fired, you know, or not being part of the session, you know, honestly, because that's your job. You're there to capture it. But it's not really about it, you know, it's not really about, you know, spending time refining things. It's just like, yeah, that sounds like a kick drum. You know, it's just like, that's a little, you know, it sounds a little boxy. You just grab the EQ, you knock the mid-range down and you go. Mm-hmm. And so it really, one of the biggest things it taught me is what is the most important thing is the performance. Mm-hmm. Capture the performance, because the performance makes things sound engaging and interesting. It's not often that the sounds make something engaging and interesting. Sometimes that is a quality that when we hear something, it's really compelling and sounds interesting. But I mean, I would say 99% of the time it's because there's like a feel, a vibe, and a performance that's associated with it that makes what makes it feel interesting. And so, yeah, just taught me that to work quickly and to make sure that you were capturing the emotion and performance. That's awesome. That was the most important thing. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, because I know you started when you went out to the Bay Area. You started live sound monitors, et cetera. So you learn mic placement and changing of the room. Like you said, crowd comes in. Yeah. The sound changes, the band changes, their emotions are ramped up. That probably started the process for you of really getting engaged or getting prepared for those fast changing environments where it's okay, we're rolling, go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started in the studio. And then I didn't have a studio job for a while, and then that's how I got into live sound. And I was, you know, and then for a few years, that's kind of how I made my living before I could kind of get back to where I wanted to be in the studio. But yeah, I learned so much. I mean, in those early days, before and after live sound, you know, a lot of the things that I did as an engineer and an assistant engineer were like commercial work, voiceover work. You know, when you have a 16-piece string section in, everybody's stressed out. Yeah. You know, not the musicians, they're not stressed out because they're getting paid by the hour. Yeah. But everybody else is like the producer and everybody else is stressed out because it costs so much money. Yeah. And there's no room for error, you know. And so, or doing voiceover work where you were doing voiceover work and, you know, you record to it was a very primitive DAW at the time. I don't remember what it was, but you also had to do backups on 2 different DAT machines. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now one was a Panasonic and one was a Sony at this one particular job I had. And you couldn't, So a lot of times you just leave them running, and you'd have to put in IDs for each, it's just like, okay, well, this is whatever dialogue
Label
part, take 3. And you'd have to keep notes, and you'd have to index the DAT as it was going. But I forget which one it was, but the Sony or the Panasonic, you couldn't put, like, if there was a false start or something, you couldn't put an ID on the fly within 10 seconds of each other.
Oh, jeez.
So you'd have, you just have to make a note, then you'd have to go back. And then when it was not in record, then you could index it later. We'd have ISDN lines. Sometimes we'd have a producer, because this was in San Francisco. But we might have a producer. The voice talent would be with us in the studio, but the producer maybe would be in New York. And so over a telephone connection, they'd be patched in, and it's just like, it's just like, I think that's something that there's a little bit missing from the training that kind of goes into building of an engineer or, just an audio professional.
Mm-hmm.
The stakes aren't quite, the stakes aren't quite as high. I mean, they are, but like technically it's not, it's a little bit it's more simplified, because pretty much now we're getting to a world where everything is in the computer in front of us.
Yeah.
And so the understanding of the way a studio is wired, the way a patch bay works, just all these things that you're expected to know, all the ground you're supposed to cover, and all the, it's becoming much simpler. And, it's like, we don't punch in on tape anymore. Yeah. It's like when you punch in on tape, if you make a mistake, well, whatever it is you record over is gone, unless you've already made a safety, which doesn't happen when you're recording and somebody wants to fix something. That you don't take time to make safety.
Different process.
So, you've got to really, it's just like, it's like walking a high wire compared to engineering of now.
Wow.
There's just more safety. It's just like, let's just make another playlist, do it again. It's just like, I'll comp it later. I'll figure out what's good later. There's a lot of that. And now I'm not saying that that's bad. I embrace it all, but it also, there are some things about the older traditional way that things had to be done, that are kind of good for the creative process. I think people just don't understand that some of what made records what they were is the limitations and the process that people had to be in. It's just like, if you don't like that vocal line and you want to re-sing it, there's no going back. It's just like, we're only going forward. It's only what you sing from this point on that can replace that. We don't have the option to go back, So it's just a different thing.
Very cool. Hey, was that back to that the Bay Area thing? Was that around the time when you started at Paul Gleason's studio?
Yeah, I moved out there. Yeah, so Pat Gleason.
Was it Pat? Oh, I thought
Pat,
it was Paul.
Yeah.
With Herbie Hancock.
Yeah, isn't it Pat Gleason? Maybe I'm wrong.
I thought it was Paul Gleason from Herbie's band or something.
It was Mr. Gleason from Herbie.
Mr. Gleason.
Mr. Gleason from Herbie Hancock's band. He's the one that started the studio. It was called Different Fur. And then he had, I think he'd sold it to Howard and Susan, who ran it when I was hired. Wow. And so when I moved to San Francisco, I was hired to work at Different Fur, and I worked there for about 6 or so months.
Yeah.
When I moved out there. So Different Fur, that was Mr. Gleason's old studio, was what brought me out to San Francisco.
Gotcha. And after that, where did you meet Eric Valentine? How did that happen?
Well, fast forward so I moved out to San Francisco in August of 1988. Fast forward a few years. Gosh, it would have been early mid 90s. When would that have been? Mid 90s, maybe about 95, 96. Maybe 97.
Is that when he was doing the Smash Mouth stuff?
Yeah, and I had met Eric briefly. He had just done that first Smash Mouth record. So, and Walking on the Sun was a big song. And then he sort of, by way of a long explanation, which I'll skip, he got involved in working with Third Eye Blind. And so He, I had briefly met him, but I was at a studio called Toast, which was originally built in 1964 by Bill Putnam in San Francisco on Mission Street as his West Coast, Northern California sort of West Coast studio, jazz studio, and it was called Coast Recorders, and then Dan Alexander took it over, and I had been an intern for Dan Alexander, so I'm rewinding back before I met Eric. So I had interned for Dan. I knew that he was moving from Coast Recorders down to Second and Harrison, which was the old Golden State recorders, where like Sly and the Family Stone recorded. Yeah. And I knew that Dan was vacating Coast. So some friends of mine that I knew that wanted to, they had the finances and wanted to start a studio. I told them about that, Craig Sylvie and Philip Steer. So we moved in, they bought the Neve board from Dan. We changed the name to Toast, which he hated us for.
Why Toast? Why Toast?
I don't know what it was just an afternoon hang, of smoking and drinking that we decided that was a good name.
It just worked.
It worked. And then so we'd been there using the studio about a year, and we'd had a good reputation for kind of opening things back up. And so like I said, go back to Eric, he started working on the Third Eye Blind album, and they wanted to go around to a few different studios so that just to have the experience of recording in some different places, give everything a little bit of their own sonic thing. I think several songs were actually tried at several studios. Yeah. But when Eric, he came to Toast, and we were a lot of the songs that are actually on that first album were recorded at Toast. And I was his assistant engineer for a few weeks. Yep. And we made good friends. He sort of complimented me pretty quickly that I was overqualified to be his assistant engineer, which I thought was nice, was a nice acknowledgement. And we just started a friendship, and then he went away. I didn't really participate in seeing that record all the way through. I was involved with it for a few weeks, and then he got a gig for this band called Citizen King that was signed to.
I remember them.
Yeah, we had a big single off that called a song called Better Days, but Eric got the gig, and they were building a studio, and they wanted to start. They wanted to get to work, but Eric had commitments that were going to take him another few months. So he asked me. He said, "Look, I'm going to get together with these guys and kind of pre-pro the songs, kind of work on the arrangements, and tell them what I want them to do. But I can't start recording when they are like adamant about starting recording. So will you please go?" Nice. And so he sent me to Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the winter, in January.
Did you do something wrong?
No, this is where they were from. And they had a studio that they were building, and they were supposed to have the studio ready by the time I showed up. They were just hanging the drywall when I showed up. Yeah. So we had to build kind of an impromptu studio, and then I sort of helped them kind of get in the studio. Subsequently, I was there for a couple months. Yeah. And we actually started recording the record in their studio, and then Eric joined us. So, and then kind of took over. And then at a certain point, he kind of took over, and then they came to Northern California to finish the album with him at his studio. So, it was just a nice acknowledgement, awesome. The way he identified me to go represent him and just kind of like record the start of his production.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We've remained good friends ever since. Mm-hmm. It's over 20 years now. And
was that through him, the introduction to Kings of Leon?
No. I was in Los Angeles working on a project with him. I forget which record it was, but a manager named Jim Phelan became interested in me because of another person that I was working with. Jim became aware of me, familiar with me. He was interested. Jim came to Eric's studio in LA Barefoot Recording, which is the old Crystal Labs.
Yeah.
So Jim and I started talking about a management relationship, and he introduced me to Ethan Johns. So when I was in LA after meeting Jim, I think later that week or the next week, I went over to Sunset Sound and met Ethan. And Ethan was in the process of recording the first Ray LaMontagne record. Which was cool. So Ethan and I met then, and then subsequent to that, he asked if I would engineer a couple things with him. So that's how. And then so eventually, after a project or two, it was time to make the second Kings of Leon record. And Ethan's incredible. He is just a phenomenal, just uniquely talented musician. Just off the charts. He can play anything. He can play anything. He is a fantastic producer, songwriter, engineer. It's just like, his uncle and his father are legends. Huge contributors, and he was raised in an environment of record making and studio and musicians. So it was really cool being around him and having that friendship. But I think he was ready to kind of step away from some of the engineering duties a little bit, just because it's a lot to manage if you're it's always doing that. And I was fortunate that he identified me to fill that role, and we got on really well. Made the second Kings of Leon record. It's not that I wasn't needed for the third record. I think Ethan wanted to engineer the third record. And I can relate to that because, I've gone back to wanting to engineer more than I did in recent years. And so they made the third record here in Nashville at Blackbird. That was the first record they made at Blackbird. And of course I went by and visited them, said hello to Ethan. When their relationship had run its course with Ethan, they asked me if I would come join them for what became Only by the Night and sort of fill his role.
Awesome.
So where I was producing, engineering, and mixing.
Wow.
And so that was, and I knew that was a huge opportunity for me. Big time. I just, at the time, I just believed that they were one of the best bands in the world. And, they felt like they had something to prove. I know I felt like I had something to prove. It was just a fantastic opportunity. And I knew we were doing great stuff. We fortunately just kind of hit that one out of the park.
Big time.
Yeah. Just like got every bit of it, on the bat, if you will. And that's cool.
Yeah. Miss baseball. Nice. I'll tell you. Hey, switching gears a little bit. Just a few things that resonate with you, family, travel and whatnot. And you mentioned Pure Mix. I want to speak a little bit about Mix with the Masters series. You've been involved with that. I remember we spoke a while ago. You were doing something in France for that. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I guess with Mix with the Masters, that's I think I gave my first seminar over there in France in 2014, 6 or 7 years ago, I guess now. Yeah. And they really, they were one of the first to really establish a sort of mentoring seminar platform in our space, in the professional, record making space. And so I've done a handful. I don't recall how many seminars I've done over the years with Mix with the Masters. And it's also a subscription platform where, do, tutorials and stuff. And, that relationship is not as active as it used to be. They've, because they're in France and, their business models changed a little bit. The content direction they're going, it's all very good, but their thing was built on attended seminars in the south of France, where there's like 15 attendees and they spend a week with you in the studio. Everyone has to be vetted in a way where they're not, they have some experience or skill. Some people are artists that record themselves. Some people are, do-it-yourselfers. Some are professionals working with professional jobs, and they just kind of want to expand. You spend the week with them and just deep dive. For me, my process when I do the seminars is get to know everybody, talk about things, answer questions, and then we spend a couple days, 2-3 days of the week, recording and mixing producing, recording, and mixing a project in the studio with where they're able to interact and sort of watch over your shoulder and ask questions. And then we wrap up by going through a project of theirs. So we kind of like, they bring up a song, and it's different for every mentor because, some of the mentors are not producers, or they're not mixers or whatever, so like if you go to, like, for instance, if a Michael Brower or Chris Lord Alge Mix with the Master seminar is mostly focused on mixing. Yeah. So I kind of, I do a bit more, and then, it's a really wonderful process. And then, I sort of I've expanded from there where I just started I've had a YouTube channel, but I've really just in the last 6-9 months started to put a little bit of focus on preparing it. And I've just now recently asked for more subscribers. Like, hey, I was close to 1,000. It's like, it's not very much, but it's like, hey, can you guys help me get to 1,000? Because when I have 1,000, then it unlocks the ability to do live stream stuff, because I enjoy the teaching stuff. I've done a recording course with the recording workshop. I went to the recording workshop with the Recording Revolution. And the Pure Mix thing is also a subscription-based program. So there's free content with these platforms that kind of show you their approach and how valuable the information is. And then there's a subscription to it where you unlock the higher levels of the pro member stuff. And I just really, really enjoy that. And Mix with the Masters and Pure Mix, I think, are the sort of the flagship of mentor, like schooling, mentorship type of stuff. I think people get a lot of value out of it.
Well, I'll tell you, like the amount of stuff you've got on the go, I don't know how you find the time to dig in and get to the records. But I mean, you're pretty involved with UA and the new Luna platform as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I wear a lot of hats, dude. I also just started a management company. But
do you sleep?
I do. I sleep, I golf, I hang out a little bit. But it's been wonderful time with my wife. She would probably appreciate it if I do more, but I think I would too. Do lots of things. What was your question you asked? Oh, about Luna. Yeah,
Luna. I mean, that's big for you. You're pretty deep in that right now, right? You're switching over, right? Aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, okay. So like that's another long-term relationship that just kind of built, like kind of how I have with you guys. It's like started using Universal Audio plugins and, got to know them, and we'd have dialogue and, just kind of like got to know each other. And over time, that relationship built to, I guess it's been maybe it's got to be, it's because I was still at Blackbird, like 6 or 7 years ago. When they started thinking about, because they'd introduced the Apollo hardware, right? And obviously, well, it's more obvious now, but, to have the plugins and to have the hardware integration and the way that they do stuff, it's kind of, and also their company being sort of having the analog heritage it does, it's like, it is a very logical step that they would create a DAW, because, the console app has to interface the hardware to be able to achieve some of the technical things that it's able to do. It needed a bridging thing, and that's going to exist to go with the other DAWs that are still out there, and will remain out there. But they came, like the lead product developer, Lev Perry, came to Nashville, and he sat in the back of the room I forget what project I was working on, but he sat in the back of the room for a couple days and just watched me work and listened and asked questions, and what do you like, what do you don't like about console, and that sort of started. And then I guess it's been a few years ago, they told me, like, okay, well, this is what we've been doing.
Nice.
We'd like your thoughts on it, and I was very excited about it because I see that this is the future of the studio for a lot of people, right?
And for you,
and for me too. It's just like, it doesn't mean I'm going to get rid of all my gear, but it expands the possibility of production and location and approach. So I fully embrace it, and nice. Selfishly want it to be great for myself as well. I want to help them make it great. I want it to be great for everybody. Not to say that I know what's going to absolutely make it great for everybody, every part of it, but I know that my input will be helpful.
That's awesome.
And so that's been a really wonderful relationship. And it's about 6 months after it was released, I was using it for mixing at first, because it sounds so great for mixing. It like leaves Pro Tools and everything else in the dust. Sorry for Pro Tools users and Avid, it's not, but it's just sonically, like, mixing. It's just so superior. And then some things kind of had to kind of be implemented and developed to where it would more easily interface with the way I have my studio wired and set up, and I have, as of about, I guess it's been close to 3 months ago, switched out all my audio interfaces to the Apollos, because it also took like rewiring some of things in my studio.
Gotcha.
I'm fully switched over now, and nice. I just I love it. It's it's like I'm able to try things like mic pre emulations that I don't own. I have 1081s and I have a 1073, but I don't have a 1084. Wow. And I don't have APIs because my console is so similar to API, right? I sold my API pre's a long time ago. But like in the box, you can just kind of flip through them real fast and find the one that's best, and move at the speed of creativity. That's always my goal. I'm trying to always be prepared to move at the speed of creativity, which goes back to the Tom Waits lesson. Yeah. Because I don't want to get in the way, engineering wise. I don't want to get in the way of creativity unless whatever the issue is going to like actually stops the show. If it's a bad mic pre or a bad EQ or a funky mic or a bad cable, I observe engineers that like have a little hissy fit, stop the whole session, bum everybody out because they're not happy because something's not working right. It's like, don't you have a tech here? That should work. That's a work. I mean, we're paying blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but it's vintage gear. And can't you complain after the session? Yeah.
Because it's going to happen, right? It's
going to happen. Something's going to buzz. Something's going to break. Something's going to get plugged in wrong. Happens every day. Yeah. That's part of it.
Yeah. I remember Marcus from Neil Finn and Fleetwood Mac said, no matter how good the gear is and how prepared you are, something is always going to break down. Something will shut the bed at some point. Just got to roll with it, right?
Yeah.
Be
prepared. Smile on your face. It's like, okay, that's not working. Going. It's just like tell the assistant, hey, I need you to patch that other channel. And you get back on the talk back. It's like, I'll be right with you guys. Everything's cool.
Chill for a sec. Be right with you.
Chill. Anybody want a coffee?
Because you got to cover all bases, like you said earlier, wear all hats, right? Hey, back to just circle back to the radio gear for a sec. You mentioned the or EXTC, the 500 mods.
Yeah,
You still using those in your setup for patching and, you know, effects and pedals and stuff like that?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you can see, I don't know if this is in the, but they're right here.
You can see them, the two of them right there.
Yeah. And they're right here and they're wired up.
Nice.
They're, one of them goes to the chorus echo
Yeah.
and the other is available for some pedals that I kind of plop up on top of there. So I haven't quite, because Luna does not yet have hardware inserts implemented. I haven't been using them as much in the last couple months because it's it's much easier to at this point to get them involved in sort of the analog world.
Sure.
But I use them. I use them quite a lot, and a lot of times what I use them on are like for actually recording source, like while I'm recording, not just like a reamp kind of like sending something out that's already pre-recorded to an effect. It's like I'll run a parallel input through it so that I can record an effect along with a performance as well. So it's like I use them in all kinds of ways.
Speeds up the workflow.
Oh yeah. Well, the other thing is like I like to record with effects along with things. You kind of create real special sounds.
Sure.
Because it just makes things sound more finished faster. It gives it a vibe. It's just like instead of just kind of like throwing a delay on the guitar after the fact when I'm mixing, or kind of like in the box. It's just like, no, if we want a delay, let's get this cool delay pedal out that I have, that's not going to sound like anything in the box. And that we can kind of, you can gain stage it a little bit, or however, and, kind of get something cool and unique and print it with the performance.
Nice.
Yeah. So I use them all. I use them a lot. Those are probably, I would say, I don't use the JD7 as much as I used to, but I would say that those are probably the most used tool that I have of Radial. Yeah.
Yeah, we just released during virtual NAMM week. We just released the XTC stereo standalone version.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A lot of people are inquiring about that because I think a lot of people wanted it. Hey, do you make a stereo version? No, but yeah, we do now. Because like you said earlier, sometimes the feedback we get from you and people in the field, it's what people are looking for.
You want to give people what they want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
100%.
They're telling you what they want to be able to purchase. So yeah. I mean, I have the standalone mono box, and I use that. I use that a lot, especially when what I use it for the most lately is when I'm recording bass.
Nice.
Because what you can't do in Luna that you can do in Pro Tools is you can have, and this is because of the way the hardware has to work. You can have a duplicate input go into two tracks. So like if I have a source plugged into input 1 in Pro Tools, you can say, oh, I want two tracks to see input 1, and then you could treat them differently in the box. Yeah. You can't do that with Luna. So you basically have to turn the bass into two inputs so that I take the DI, and then instead of miking an amp, I'm using the B15 or SVT emulation.
Yeah.
So I have to give it. So I use the standalone XTC to give me that split signal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So. Hey, speaking of DIs, have you had a chance to? I know we were back and forth trying to sort out the HDI. Have you had a chance to run that up the flagpole at all?
I have. Yeah. What do you think of it? I'm ready to talk to Jay about that, or you. Yeah. I mean,
cool.
Yeah. It's just like it's interesting. Had the trouble with the first unit. You guys sent the second unit, and it appeared to be doing the same thing, but so eventually you guys got me a third unit. I have the second and third unit here. Yeah. Third unit's totally great. Went back and checked the second. Now it's like, okay, that works the way I remember it being shown to me.
Yeah.
And then
at the NAMM show,
at the
right?
NAMM show. And then I compared the second unit to the third unit. And the second unit seems fine.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. I don't know what happened. And then I have some feedback for you guys too on it. But
perfect. Yeah.
I did that a couple weeks ago, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. Because over the holidays, I think you went away or something, and we got another one out to you. But I think you and your wife had taken off or something. Didn't you go somewhere in the sun?
Yeah, I went to the Bahamas. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. A little golfing.
No, I didn't know, because that was kind of like a family trip. So I don't. When the grandkids and the kids are around,
I gotcha.
I just don't want to be thinking about like, when am I going to get to go play golf? I don't. Yeah, it's just like I just want to hang out with everybody. And it makes it better when I'm home, because then they're like, go to the golf course, will you?
Give us some space. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Oh, it's good. It's good to hear. It's good to hear from you and see you. The last time was NAMM. It's weird to not be able to do NAMM this year. Hopefully next year we'll be able to all get together and do it in person. I think everybody will be embracing being able to see each other.
I hope so, man. I really hope so.
I miss it. I miss it a lot. So
yeah. Fortunately for me, I have golf. So I get out, here in Tennessee, we have our warm days and not so warm days even through the winter. So it's like, I think it might be warm enough in the next few days to go out. And, so what that means is I get outside and, because you can keep social distancing with your friends playing golf.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't feel like I've been completely cooped up and isolated. Mm-hmm. I've been able to play golf for the last year. Nice. On and off, actually taken some good golf trips as well. Nice. So yeah, I mean, that's an important thing, that I had in my mind to say to the folks later today is just like taking care of your health.
Yeah.
Taking care of your health and having a broader life than just in the studio and focused on gear, mm-hmm. Is important. It's important for your perspective. Just taking care of your health allows you to think and hear clearly.
Yeah, big time. Mental health. I mean, we're at a point where we're trying to find that balance and learning a lot about ourselves and the changes around us for sure. It's an interesting time we're in. I was talking to Nathan East a little while ago, and he said the same thing. Usually he's out the door, bags packed and on the road, and that routine, it's different now. And we're finding we're closer together in, like our family, right? We're closer mm-hmm. together. We're finding, the isolation can create, especially for musicians and songwriters, there's an explosion of material. Everyone's in the studio, upgrading their studios, upgrading their space, trying to, find that outlet. And
I was talking, Roxanne Ricks at Audio Technica.
Yeah.
So I was speaking to Roxanne last week, and because I'm involved in this other thing, helping with the audio for this media endeavor, and we're setting up a podcast studio. And I was, asking Roxanne about some microphones and this boom, this, like you said, everybody upgrading their studios and all this, mm-hmm. like everybody's at home focusing on stuff. They're like 20 and 30,000 units back ordered.
Kidding. Wow.
No. Yeah.
Whoa.
So on certain things, so it's just like, there's what I'm really curious about is like, how do we get to a process where we can make good on all this progress, that we've made in terms of connection and, because I mean, Zoom is a wonderful tool, like, what we're using, but it's not very good for audio. And it's like, it's just like, mm-hmm. you can't pass high fidelity or recording worthy audio through it. It's just like, so how do we, I know there's audio movers, there's all these pieces. It's just like, I'm really curious. It's like when it can come together in a real streamlined situation that, I feel connected enough to you. I wish you were here doing the interview with me. Right. But I feel connected enough to you that if we can figure out how to get the technology sorted out, I think we'll be in a really interesting spot. I mean, it'll allow me to go to the Bahamas and, and do stuff. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I love the Universal Audio recording system, Luna, because it's going to allow me to go work in remote locations.
Yeah, in the box.
It's just
pick up and go.
Yeah. I'm as sad. I mean, honestly, Jim, I am just as satisfied with my mixes in Luna as I used to be when I would mix things on a console.
Wow.
For a long time, I just had to work so much harder to get, what I was using before to sound as good as I wanted it to sound.
Wow.
It was just easily twice the work.
Wow.
So at first, when I was mixing Luna, I was like, I'm not really doing that much. It's like, I'm pretty minimalist. I try to be as minimalist as I can. I'll always do what's appropriate, but it's just like, I don't really feel like I'm doing that much.
Wow.
But all the tape emulation and the console emulation and the way that it sounds and functions just kind of just gives you all that stuff that we're searching for all the time. I mean,
well, if it's all there, then it's working.
Yeah, it's crazy. But listen, man, I appreciate the time today and you inviting me to do this, seeing you. Yeah.
Good to see you too. If we were together, we'd have a beer and maybe go hit the links.
That sounds well. We will do.
We'll do that.
We'll do that.
We'll do that. Hey, listen, in closing, hey, one last thing I wanted to just say again. We appreciate the time, and I mean, you're involved in something out. You said something about was it NBC or some studios, some build outs or something you wanted to talk to us about?
Oh yeah, the podcast that I just mentioned.
Okay, yeah, we should talk offline about that to get you guys what you need and get you sorted out.
Yeah,
I know Jay wants to talk to you about that as well.
Awesome. Please tell Jay I said hello.
Will do. He's a busy guy. He's juggling. He's got a lot going on. We're moving. Radial's moving. We're moving out of the building. New buildings, same area, about 5 minutes from where we are now, just a bigger space. And that's happening sort of as we speak. But in February, we're going to close for a week. Trucks and everything gets moved over. Most of us are still remote right now, but the new building, it'd be good to get back in there when things are kind of moving back to normal and we can all see each other and get back into the game together, one big family. Sure. So, but yeah, speaking of family, thanks, man. You're one of the family. We appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Best of the family. In closing, anybody want to get in touch with you? It's JacquireKing.com, right?
Yep. And there's a link. There's a email which myself and my assistant check occasionally. We don't check it every day.
No problem. And
but yeah, you can follow me on Instagram it's at Jacquire King.
Yeah.
My website is JacquireKing.com. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have it's Jacquire King is my YouTube. You can find me, and I intend in the next few months to start doing some interaction live stream stuff and be consistent about getting some material up there for people to have access to.
Awesome. I'll be watching.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Happy to support, man. Anytime. If you like what we're doing, as the viewers out there, click subscribe, hit the notification button, and let us know what you think. And Jacquire, thanks for joining me, man. I'm Jim Rhodes for Radial Engineering, Radial on Record. And till next time, over and out. We'll see you when we see you.